The Obsidian Codex. Interlude. The Children in the Trees. Part 2. Okay, Side B. In the cool of that evening, recovering from the massive shock of the sighting, I sat at my desk, surrounded by dozens of open books, reviewing all I knew from my research of the Aztec pantheon. I gritted my teeth, discouraged by the paucity of information. The lid had been ripped off of the world, and I was left staring into its writhing black bowels, with only secondary sources and the accounts of conquerors to aid me. I stood and went to the kitchen where Marta was preparing our meal. Hugging her from behind till she giggled like a schoolgirl, I soaked in her vitality and warmth. Then I took a seat at our rough-hewn wooden table and sighed. "Feeling better, I take it?" she quipped, glancing at me. "Somewhat. Certain doubts I had have been clarified to a degree." Dishes clanked as she worked. "The knotty problem that's been bugging you, yes?" "Just so. That is to say, it's still a problem, but I understand the scope better. I'm no longer confused. Now I need to do a little research before I decide what must be done." She made a soft noise of vague understanding, turning to set a glass of lemonade before me. "Drink up. I think your blood sugar must be low. You look so pale today." I sipped and regarded her narrow back. She was 27 years my junior, gray only now beginning to rime the edges of her long black hair. As she moved through the kitchen, I was reminded of the intricate steps of native dances. My heart ached with love for her. She will be okay, I thought, even when I'm gone, if it should come to that. She's still young enough to find another. She can live with our son in Austin. There are so many possibilities for her. Setting a steaming plate of food before me, she settled in at my side, eyes bright with the contentment that had bound us for decades. "Do you mind if I ask you something? In Tepoztlan, when you were growing up, did you hear stories of the goddess Cihuacoatl?" Marta finished chewing and nodded thoughtfully. "Sure, legends and so forth." "Tell me some of them." She raised an eyebrow. "Nelson, dear, I'm a cardiologist, not an anthropologist. You know more about all that than I ever will. I'm sure you've studied all the old gods again and again." "I learned Nahuatl among your people, Marta. I know there's lore that has been passed teacher to student, generation after generation, that only small communities retain." Perhaps, but why would you want to listen to my half-remembered and probably skewed versions of those tales? Humor me, beautiful. I want to hear you. I took one of her hands in mine and kissed those nimble fingers, gifted in surgery and cuisine and so much more. She ruffled my silver hair playfully. "In that case, okay, let's see. The old folks used to say that Cihuacoatl was the mother of mankind. that at the beginning of the present age, she took the bones of giants and sirens and dwarves and ground them down to a fine powder like cornmeal. Then she made her brothers and sisters bleed into her mortar, mixing divine blood with the old bones to fashion men and women. But the wise ones always added, Cihuacoatl went mad one day, killing Xochimilco and others of the first humans, her own children. Quetzalcoatl, the god who had brought her the bones, plunged Cihuacoatl into the warm waters of the ancient lakes of the Valley of Mexico. He could not kill her, but he sank her deep into sleep. Of course, sleep means dreams, and the dreams of a goddess are more powerful than reality. Nightmare apparitions terrified all the Nawa tribes living in the area, wailing like some insane woman, calling out from the depths of the lake for the children she herself had slain. Kind of like La Llorona. She entered the thoughts of women who had lost their own children, driving them mad. She twisted the souls of mothers who died giving birth, turning them into Cihuacoatl, avenging demons who haunt crossroads, searching for kids to steal away. Cihuacoatl became known as a devourer, a horrifying force that brought nothing but death and destruction. The only way to calm her deadly dreams was through sacrifice. The old folks told us that more people were slain to appease her than any other goddess, usually young women, virgins. Marta ate a few bites, drank half of her lemonade. That's about all I remember. Pretty scary stuff, isn't it? Trying to hide the shaking of my hands as I continued eating, I nodded. Yes, much more vivid the way you retell it. Well, the stories were great deterrents. None of us children dared to go out at night, and even less to lakes or rivers or crossroads. I sketched a smile to hide my dismay. No, I suppose you didn't. Thanks, my dear. This helps. A lot. Happy to oblige, love. Later, as we sat on the veranda and watched the stars struggle valiantly against the encroaching clouds, I told my wife that I would be visiting the borough of Xochimilco the following week. Is that why you were asking about Cihuacoatl? Have they discovered something important down there in what's left of the old lakes? Something like that, yes. I've been asked to consult again. Shouldn't be more than a day or two, but it's a bit far to drive, so I thought I'd stay overnight in a hostel. Martha, accustomed to my sporadic trips across Mexico, simply nodded and touched my spotted hand. Then, shivering at the wind, a foretaste of impending autumn, she slipped inside to grab a sweater, leaving me alone in the gathering night. On September 18th, 1985, I traveled to the borough of Xochimilco on the south side of Mexico City. I had the taxi take me to a humble inn at the edges of the neighborhood known as La Asunción, where I slept uneasily after a light supper. In my dreams, serpents or tentacles writhed amid scales and feathers and vast red eyes that opened to look upon me with vacant insouciance. By 5 a.m., I had slept all I could. An early morning cab dropped me at the canals, where I wandered aimlessly along the empty dock, staring at the mist-wreathed water. Finally, as the sun thrust its pale, arthritic fingers above the horizon, a small chalupa pulled up alongside me. Manning its oars were a boy and girl of between 10 and 12 years of age. The similarities in their features suggesting close kinship. "Are you looking to hire a boat, sir?" the boy asked, pushing his lanky black hair from his eyes. "Yes, please." I stepped into the chalupa, sitting on a wooden bench at about its midpoint. "My name is Carlos. This is my sister, Azucena. Where to, sir?" "For right now, just give me a tour of the canals." "As you wish, boss. It's a little foggy, but that should burn off by 7 or so." We set off along the waterways, the mist gradually thinning to reveal little islands called chinampas, farming plots built up over the years from artificial mangroves of juniper and soil. The former lake was now a labyrinth of these gardens, the passages between them transformed into the canals for which this area is famous. Azucena softly revealed that she and Carlos lived on just such an isle, with their elderly grandmother, their parents having left more than a year ago to find work in the U.S. before sending for the siblings. As we made our way toward the northeast, a new sensation joined the constant dread curling in my gut. A tangible oppression, as if invisible hands were pushing against me. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught strange movements in the water. "Is there a scary place nearby, kids? Maybe with bones or something really weird like that?" Carlos lifted his oar from the water and turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "Maybe, there's the Isle of the Dolls a little farther ahead. It's definitely weird." Azucena nodded in agreement. "Really scary." "Good. Take me there." The rhythmic splash of rowing was the only sound for another 15 minutes or so. I checked the water for signs of the deep ones, then glanced at my watch. It was nearly 7 a.m. The moment I looked up, the mist parted ahead of the boat, revealing a startling scene. Hanging from a dozen trees upon a broad chinampa were what at first glance appeared to be children. Adrenaline kicked at my heart for a moment, but then I remembered the name of the place. Isle of the Dolls. Carlos leapt out onto the bare roots of the mangrove and pulled the chalupa up out of the water, signaling for me to disembark as well. I did so, eyes flitting over the broken and moldy forms of dolls with which the branches had been festooned. After walking a few yards, I turned around, my eyes narrowing. "Just who lives here?" I asked the children. Carlos jerked his head at something behind him. "Here he comes now." A middle-aged man was approaching, machete in hand. His clothes were threadbare and dirty. Even in the morning chill, his shirt was stained with sweat, as if he had been working in his tangled fields since before sunup. "What do you folks want?" he asked, swinging his machete and burying its blade in a nearby tree. "Good morning. I'm Dr. Kerr." farmer stepped closer, accepting my proffered hand. Julian Santana Barrera at your service. A pleasure. I wanted to ask you about these dolls. Santana Barrera looked up, confused, as if noticing the bizarre display for the first time. Oh, them. It's, a tradition. Keeps evil spirits away, helps at harvest time, like having an alush around. A garden gnome, I mean. A tradition, huh? Yes, sir. I don't see other chinampas with dolls hanging from the trees, Julian. Rubbing his stubbly cheeks, the farmer shrugged. It's not the dolls so much. A sound reached me then, a strange bubbling from the water. Fear gripped my chest like a taloned fist. Struggling for air, I cut to the chase. Are they for Cihuacoatl, Julian? Is that why you do it? The man's eyes went wide. How? How could you know? I just know. Tell me. Spreading his hands wide in an almost plaintive gesture, the farmer explained. No one makes the sacrifices anymore. Her sleep is uneasy. Crops spoil. Folks get crazy. Weird specters roam the canals at night. One day I found a doll floating near the dock. I don't know how it occurred to me, but I brought the thing back and stuck it in a tree, saying some of the old words. It helped. My crops were better. No more nightmares, for a time. But it didn't last. We could all feel her, twisting and turning there, down below. So I started trolling the dumps and canals, looking for these lost companions of children who've grown too old to care, who turned their backs on innocence and tossed aside their toys. I hanged them from the trees, as the ancients did to the maidens they offered up to her. It's a poor substitute, but it's worked so far. The faint outlines of a plan began to form as I studied the trees. Some sort of foundation that would collect unwanted dolls, a network that would transport them here. Chinampa farmers paid to hang the childlike forms, all innocence lost, from broad branches. Perhaps there was a way to stave off oblivion. Azucena gave a startled screech and rushed towards Julian. I turned to see sleek green heads emerging from the water, obsidian eyes glaring unblinkingly. Then webbed claws gripped the dangling roots, and the deep ones dragged themselves into the autumnal air. Holy Mother of God, cried Carlos, backing away. At that moment, the entire world seemed to shudder in horror. The dolls danced grotesquely at the end of their makeshift nooses as the trees quivered and the ground shook like a palsied leviathan. They're waking her, I screamed, despair tearing at my mind. The green bastards are waking Cihuacoatl! Without warning, Julian slammed his fist into the back of Carlos's head, tumbling the youth unconscious to the quaking soil. Then, oh my God, he grabbed Azucena, pinning her arms to her sides as she struggled, howling to be free. My machete, doctor! Shouted Julian, as a half-dozen deep ones slunk closer and the island shuddered, pounded by waves of rising water. Pull it from the tree and slit her throat! What? Are you insane? Do it now! The dolls are not enough! A child's
Blood must be spilled today!
Wailing at the sight of the blubbering girl, the mad-eyed farmer, the encroaching beasts, I recalled the words of the Obsidian Codex, and I finally understood. Indifference to youth, able to destroy it without a second thought. No! I wailed. I can't!
You old fool! Why did you come here then? You must kill her, or be damned and damn the rest of us with you. I can't do it alone, Doctor. Even now, she's slipping from my arms.
I thought of Martha, our home crumbling around her, trapped or dead beneath some structural beam, the city in ruins, burning, millions of lives snuffed, a dozen great old ones rising from their slumber to join their sister, the world consumed by cyclopean forces for which mankind but was an insect to swat aside unthinkingly. No, not now. As whistling breath and slimy gills blew cold upon my neck, I stumbled to the twisted bowl, yanked the blade free, and oh my god, I drew it quick across the girl's bare neck. Blood burbled and flowed in streams down her blouse. Julian dropped her, ripped a doll from its noose, looped the rope under the girl's arms, and hoisted her with a savage grunt into the branches. Arterial spray arced over my head, spattering the deep ones and the water beyond them. The earthquake slowly stilled. The silent creatures of the depths seized the body of the unconscious boy and dragged it along as they slipped back into the canal and disappeared. I dropped to my knees, staring at the blood that was smeared on the machete, on my hands, on my clothes. The dread I had felt for months was gone, but so was every other feeling. I was left empty and dark, like the black void between dying stars. You know the numbers. Nearly 10,000 people died in the event. Large sections of Mexico City were virtually flattened. Public services could not be restored for weeks in some areas. The metro was shut down. The authorities prohibited any automobile circulation into the most impacted boroughs. I spent several agonizing days trying to find Martha. Rumors reached me that Hospital Juarez, where my wife worked, had collapsed and trapped hundreds. A 13-second aftershock nearly broke what was left of my mind, but then the tremors ceased altogether. After many ordeals and bureaucratic maneuvering, we were reunited. Martha was fine, if shaken and distraught at my absence. She'd worked a night shift and was asleep in bed when the earthquake hit. Our house remained standing, one of the few not damaged in their neighborhood. When I at last rushed up the steps to our veranda, I embraced my wife, weeping, and she held me like a disconsolate child. Autumn deepened over the broken city, and I recognized in its chill the same frigid winds that scoured the desolate landscapes of my soul. Taking up my secret journals, I added a final line before locking them away. Nitlacatlachiye, well anitlacatl. I seem to be a man, but I am truly inhuman. The worst part, dear Robert, was that I had tossed aside my humanity for a fleeting reprieve. Martha and I moved to Austin to be near family. For short spans of time, usually spent in the company of my grandson or my wife, I can forget, allow the illusion of purpose and place to settle lightly on the world. But it never lasts. The doctors say I will live another decade, maybe 15 years. But I know I will never again experience joy. Joy, you see, is for the blind, and my eyes are open. At any moment, the world might crack open and swallow everything I love down its cold, immoral maw. The knowledge has annihilated my soul by relentless, insidious stages. Reality itself has turned on me. I can get no purchase on the universe. It moves onward, pitiless, caring not a whit. In my dreams, white figures sway against the green. The children in the trees.